Chapter 1. How to Start and Grow a Collection. How to choose the best collectible for you. Collectible terms you should know. Keeping good records and notes. Collectible books and newspapers. Origin of collectibles and many firsts. Getting started with collectibles. Welcome to the world of super collectors. This is where 1 is a treasured find, 2 is a set, and 3 makes a collection. Sometimes a collection gets started when a person is given a gift or they inherit an item, and these hold such sentimental value that we have a desire to add more. Then there are collectors who come across an object that grabs their attention and sparks a desire to find more and more. There may also be a time when we spot an item that is exactly what we had as a child, or something that looks like an item a grandparent owned. The object triggers memories that we want to hold on to, and a collection is grown from there. Tip number 1. Where to start. There are several ways to get started in learning about antiques. One way is to visit antique stores and fellow collectors. They love to talk about their treasured finds and to educate the public. An auction house and an antique fair are other ways to learn. They have studied the history of their pieces and include the information in their brochures and programs. These are more places where you can search for collectibles. The website Antique Trader is chock full of information about collectibles. Along with discussing the different collectibles, they delve into the history and value of the items. You can also find information about antique shops, museums, and stories about collectors and their experiences. The website replacements.com will come in handy if your collection is a piece of a set. The site can help you find different pieces to complete your collection. There's also cleaning materials, storage items, and items needed to display your items. You can even shop for ornaments, figurines, village houses, and more. You will read several times in this book the importance of knowing the history of collectibles. Homes and Antiques is a phenomenal website that explores the history of many collectibles throughout the years. They also give tips on displaying your pieces. Tip number 2. What to consider when starting a collection. When choosing a collectible, there are several factors to consider. Do you have the room for your collectible? Salt and pepper shakers, egg plates, or mustache cups will fill shelves nicely. Still, others need a wider set of shelves and eventually their own room. Do you have a favorite animal, sport, or team, hobby? Is there something about your profession that you adore enough to want to make into a collection? For example, police officers and firefighters collect patches and accountants collect calculators. And remember, there is no rule that says you cannot have more than one collection. Some choose a collectible based on the value, and if they can sell it in the future for a higher cost. Whether you are a collector as an investor or want to save items that you cherish, be sure to learn the history of your collectible. This will widen your scope of knowledge, helping you age your treasured finds, which will also help you determine its value. It will also keep you from being conned by people who try to sell an item to you at a higher cost, claiming it is an antique. Here are a few examples. Automobiles did not have speedometers until 1901, and the Olds Motor Vehicle Company started it. Harley-Davidson did not make their gas tanks in a teardrop shape until 1925. Zip codes were first used in 1963. The first cash register was built in 1879 by John Ritty. There are several category collectibles. Tip 3. Online courses for collectors. The website learningwiththeexperts.com offers several online courses under a variety of subjects dealing with antiques and collectibles. The two websites Universal Class, universalclass.com, and Udemy, that's udemy.com, offer courses on buying and selling antiques and collectibles. At Udemy, there are also courses on how to collect books and find an introduction to stamp collecting. There's also a course on how to find, fix, and sell vintage Tonka trucks. The Ashford Institute of Antiques, ashford.com, is an online school dedicated to everything related to antiques and collectibles. Tip number 4. Antiques versus collectibles versus vintage. Though some people can collect antiques, not all collectibles are antiques. It is simple to remember. An antique is an item that is more than 100 years old. A collectible is anything new and up to 100 years old. Then you have vintage collectibles. Vintage describes any item that is between 20 and 99 years old. Tip number 5. Different terms collectors should know. Emboina. This is a reddish-brown type of wood from Indonesia. Arcading, a design in the shape of an arch found on chairbacks and coffers. Cased glass. This is what they call layers of blown glass. Chinoiserie. In the 16th century, the Portuguese had ceramics imported into the United States. They referred to them as chinoiserie. It describes collectibles that have an Asian look. Coin silver, a piece that is 90% silver. Conservator, a person who repairs and preserves collectibles and antiques. Cordwainer, this is a person who made shoes. Crisling, or weeping glass. This happens when there is an instability of the glass during production that gives it either a look of tiny cracks or a cloudy appearance. Curio, a term referred to a curious and intriguing item. Diaper work, a repeating pattern of diamond shapes. EPNS. These are initials that stand for electroplated nickel silver. This is used to make cutlery that will last for generations. Foxing, a type of mold that appears as brown dots on vintage ephemera that has not been stored properly. This happens mostly on maps. Garage kit, a model kit using figures made of resin. Heirloom. This describes an object that has belonged to the same family for several generations. Kitsch. This is a name given to ugly collectibles. Yes, these are items actually made to look ugly. Manufactured collectible. Contemporary collectible. This is an item that was made to be collected. These are items marked limited edition and special edition. Mint. Item is still in the original condition with the original packaging. Mocha. This describes an artistic and swirl design found on ceramics. Patina. Everything that happens to an item over a period of time. This includes dusting, polishing, neglect, sun damage, scratches, dings, and sagging. Preambulator. This was once the name for baby carriages. Repro. A new item that is created to look like an antique. Soakies. A collector of bubble bath bottles gave his collection this name. It stuck on, and now collectors of plastic figure bubble bath containers call them Soakies. Tapestry. A heavy fabric that is hand-woven and used on the back of chairs. Tip number 6. Keep good records. Collectors should keep track of each item in their collection. This record is called a provenance. Remember that word. It will come up again when someone asks to see your provenance. This is a detailed record that collectors maintain for each piece they own. The first thing you need to do is assign a number to the item. In your notes, write the name of the object with the corresponding number along with a description. Note when and where you bought the piece or if it was given to you. Were there any appraisals or restorations done to the piece? If so, when did it occur and who did the work? Save certificates and photos of each collectible. Save checks and receipts with it. Be sure to copy the designated number onto the picture if possible. Then write the number on each document that goes with the collectible piece. Save the information in a notebook or a 3-ring binder. If you use the binder, store the photos and paperwork in sheet protectors. Do not poke holes in them. Any auction house or antique dealer will tell you the extreme importance of provenance. Tip number 7. Companies behind collectibles and antiques. Collectors of dishes, figurines, and housewares tend to focus on a favored style or company. These are some of the companies admired by collectors. When researching the name of the company that produced your piece, you will want to note these details of their history. Name changes, who founded the company, first year of business, where were they located, if they moved, learn their different locations, and when they were there. What are all the items they produced? These change through time. Last year production, if it applies, and the location of the company from start to finish. Royal Doulton, Glass Baron, Mary Engelbreit, FJ Designs, Sandicast, Department 56, Bradford Exchange, Hagen Renaker, Heisey Glass, Kemple Glass, Liberty Blue Design, Lenox, Fenton Glass, Atterbury, Emmett Kelly Jr., Nippon, Occupied Japan, England. Tip number 8. Basic rules to obtaining autographs for collections. When getting your collectible signed, there are two things to remember. If it is on fabric, then it should be signed with a Sharpie. Balls from any sport should be signed with a ballpoint pen. When you save an autographed collectible, make sure the autograph is clear or crisp. The condition of the item itself is also important. There should be no damage, smudges, creases, or smears. Timing is also crucial. Did you receive the autograph before their death? Was it at the beginning or end of an event, such as war or change in career? Tip number 9. Facts about collectible figurines. In the world of collectible figurines, there is a wide variety. That selection includes Willow Tree, Kelvin's, Hanford, Hummel, Eric Stauffer, and Napco figurines. That is just to name a few. There are many more you can discover on your journey. Lladró was founded by brothers Juan, Jose, and Vicente Lladró in 1953. They first made vases and jugs. They started making figurines in 1956. Precious Moments was introduced in 1975 on inspirational cards and posters. The figurines were introduced in 1978. Cherished Teddies, made by Unesco, are the most sought-after figurines of teddy bears. They were created from the drawings of Priscilla Hillman and her son Glenn Herman. They were first sold in 1992. Paula figurines are whimsical trophies from the 1970s that acknowledge things like the best mom, a wonderful bowler, or just had a fun message depicted on the trophy. They were made by Paula, a section of the Wallace Berry Company. When Snow Babies were introduced in 1986 by Department 56, they were known as Sugar Babies. They are made out of sugar and used for cake decorations. Germany started making them out of porcelain. Other countries began making them out of chalkware because they didn't want to buy from Germany during Hitler's domain. The older figurines are referred to as old babies. Tip number 10. What to know about collectible books. Book collectors mostly focus on a specific author or genre. There are also book collectors that search for miniatures, first editions, and little golden books. When judging the value of books, the condition is critical when determining value. These are the grades that are used when determining the condition of a book. Very fine, VF, a flawless book, the closest to being brand new. Fine, F. These books may have one or two small bumps. They are also known as carefully read. The dust jacket should be undamaged. Near fine, NF. This has some wear and tear and one or two small flaws. Very good, VG. Several minor flaws, nothing major. Good, G. A typical used book can have minor and major flaws. Fair, FR. Worn condition, loose binding, minor and major flaws, known as well-read. The dust jacket is missing, along with one or more mom essential pages. Poor, P. Very bad condition, considered acceptable for reading, but not collecting. Dame Juliana Berners wrote a treatise of fish-ins with an angle in 1496. This was the first book about the proper way to fish. Samuel Richardson wrote Pamela in 1740. This was the first romance novel. Edgar Allan Poe wrote The Murder in the Rue Morgue in 1841. This is the first modern detective story. In 1859, Wilkie Collins wrote Woman in White. This is considered the first mystery novel. The first phone book was published on July 2, 1874. Fanny Farmer published the Boston Cooking School Cookbook in 1896. In that book, she introduced the concept of using measuring spoons and measuring cups. She also created the format for the modern recipe, which lists the ingredients first, precise measurements, and the directions listed in order. Tip number 11. Collectible Cliff Notes. Some of us would never have made it through the literary classics without the help of Clifton Hillegas. He is the Cliff behind Cliff Notes, those little yellow study guides that condense 100 pages of Shakespeare into 3 concise paragraphs. Each volume of his study guides included a signed note to his readers. A thorough appreciation of literature allows no shortcuts. Hillegas started his company with a $4,000 loan in 1958 and published 16 Shakespearean study guides. He ran his company from the basement of his Lincoln, Nebraska home. His wife and daughter helped by stuffing envelopes and mailing letters to contacts. When he found out that students were using them as cheat guides, he added this disclaimer to his books. These notes are not a substitute for the text itself or for the classroom discussion of the text, and students who attempt to use them in this way are denying themselves the very education that they are presumably giving their most vital years to achieve. When the company started, the name of the books was Cliff's Notes. In 1964, they dropped the apostrophe from their name and became Cliff's Notes. In 1998, he sold Cliff's Notes to IDG Books for $14 million. The name was changed once more in 2001 when they were bought by John Wiley & Sons. The name changed to Cliff's Notes. Cliff passed away in 2001, but his memory lives on in his native Nebraska. For 40 years, he donated 10% of his profits to local charitable causes. Tip 12. Book Firsts. William Shakespeare created the name Jessica. When J.M. Barrie wrote Peter Pan, he created the name Wendy. William Shakespeare created words and expressions that we still use today. And like Shakespeare, Dr. Seuss often created his own words when he could not find just the right one to use. This was the case in 1950 when he created the word nerd for his book, If I Ran the Zoo. French author Charles Perrault wrote Cendrillon in 1697. Walt Disney rewrote it as his version, Cinderella. It is noted that Perrault's Cendrillon is the first fairy tale. Another notable book by Dr. Seuss is The Lorax. This was his nod to environmentalism and how destructive humans are treating the planet Earth. A few felt the book made them look bad. The logging industry was one of them. In turn, they wrote The Truax, which was an attempt to tell their side of the issue. The book also has the line, "I hear things are just as bad up in Lake Erie." This caught the eye of Ohio residents. 14 years later, the Ohio Sea Grant Program reached out to Dr. Seuss, informing him that Lake Erie's conditions have greatly improved. They asked him to please remove the line from his book. He graciously agreed that it would no longer be included in future editions. Tip number 13. Newspaper dates collectors should know. It is impossible to have copies of the first newspapers published, but as mentioned previously, it is essential to know the history of collectibles. Here is a timeline through the stages of the newspaper field. 59 BC, Acta Diurna. The first newspaper is published in Rome. 1556, first monthly newspaper, Notizia Scritta, is published in Venice. 1605, first weekly newspaper, titled Relation, is published in Antwerp, Belgium. 1690, Public Occurrence, America's first newspaper is published. 1702, the Daily Courant was the first English-language daily newspaper. It was first printed in 1621. 1704, Daniel Defoe publishes The Review. He is considered the world's first journalist. Also that year, on May 8, 1704, the Boston Newsletter published the first ad. It was for the sale of property on Oyster Bay, Long Island. 1831, the famous abolitionist newspaper, The Liberator, is first published by William Lloyd Garrison. 1833, the New York Sun newspaper costs 1 cent, the beginning of the penny press. 1851, the post office starts offering a special cheap newspaper rate. 1856, the first full-page newspaper ad is published in the New York Ledger. Large-type newspaper ads are made famous by photographer Matthew Brady. Machines now mechanically fold newspapers. 1860, a morgue in newspaper terms means an archive. The New York Herald starts the first morgue. 1864, William James Carleton of J. Walter Thompson Company begins selling advertising space in newspapers. Today, the J. Walter Thompson Company is the longest-running American advertising agency. 1873, first illustrated daily newspaper published in New York. 1877, first weather report with a map published in Australia. The Washington Post newspaper first publishes with a circulation of 10,000 and a cost of 3 cents per paper. 1903, the first tabloid-style newspaper, the Daily Mirror, is published. Tip 14. How to Spot a First. J. Roderick MacArthur founded the Bradford Exchange in 1973. They are most known for their porcelain dolls. Their first porcelain doll was Jason, and it sold for $48. Collectible plates got their start in Denmark in the 1800s. They were wooden, and wealthy landowners gave them as Christmas gifts to the families who lived and worked on their land. They would gift them with baked goods, and when they were done with the treats, they saved the plates. When the cost of porcelain dropped, they used porcelain plates instead of wooden. The first porcelain plates were blue and white and had a Christmas design. In 1895, Bing and Grandal made the plate behind the frozen window. This was the world's first true collector's plate. If you come across a calculator that bears the name Anita, those were the first calculators and were introduced in 1956. They were on a larger scale, so they were desktop. Texas Instruments debuted in 1967. They made the first handheld calculators. One of their original calculators is on display at the Smithsonian. The Lenox Company was founded by Walter Scott Lenox and opened in 1889. They were the first makers of the china used in the White House. Their work was inducted into the Smithsonian Institution in 1897. The most famous rifle in American history was created in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, during the mid-1700s. It was named the Pennsylvania Long Rifle. This set the stage for rifles to come. Tip 15. Accidental collectible. Though there have been mistakes on collectibles that made them more valuable, there are also accidents that become collectibles. Here are some accidental collectibles. Take note of the years these things happened. In 1904, tea bags were invented accidentally. Thomas Sullivan decided it was cheaper to send small samples to potential customers in silk bags instead of boxes of loose tea. The recipients thought they were supposed to dunk the bag in hot water. Sullivan was soon flooded with orders for his tea bags. Harry Brierley attempted to make a new type of metal for guns stronger than iron. He examined the metal he created, but found no use for it. So Brierley put it aside. Months later, in 1913, while looking through the scrap he had thrown out, he realized that one of his discarded pieces had not rusted. By accident, he discovered stainless steel. People originally used bread to erase pencil marks. In 1770, Edward Nain picked up a piece of rubber instead of bread and found it to be effective. He then started to sell rubber erasers. So the item created to fix mistakes was invented because of a mistake. Though many items made their first debut at the World's Fair, we can credit the St. Louis World's Fair of 1904 with another accidental invention. It stemmed more out of necessity. Ernest A. Hamway was selling waffle-like desserts next to a man selling ice cream. When he ran out of cups, Hamway stepped in to help. He rolled one of his waffles into the shape of a cornucopia. This was the first waffle cone. Though Italy invented the first ice cream cone, credit for the waffle cone goes to Hamway. Tip 16. Popular and valuable collectibles today. What is popular among collectibles changes by the decade. It is hard to tell which one of today's items will soar in value. These are some of today's most valuable collectibles: Birkin bags, costume jewelry, Stetson hats, purses from the 50s through 70s, jewelry presentation box, chinoiserie, jadeite pieces, Christmas decorations, Royal Doulton and Royal Worcester, duck decoys, football programs, movie and concert posters, VHS tapes, belly boards, guitars, tools, postcards, soda crates, Art Deco clocks, photographs, typewriters, vinyl records, advertising signs, lunch boxes, cast iron mailboxes, mechanical banks, Victor radios and record players, space memorabilia, Boy Scouts memorabilia, Super Bowl memorabilia, women's suffrage memorabilia, campaign memorabilia, silver cups, trunks. Tip 17. What type of collector are you? These terms describe specific types of collectors. You will hear them mentioned at auction houses, conventions, and antique shops. Aerophilately, a person that collects items relating to airmail. Ichmophobia, a collector of knives, swords, and similar sharp items. Arctophilist, a person who collects teddy bears. Arenophile, this is a person who collects sand samples from around the world. Bibliophilist, a person who collects books. Some look for specific types such as little golden books, antique books, miniatures, first editions, a favorite author, or genre. Brandophilist, a person who collects cigar bands. Brewerania, alcohol-related items. Some contain a brewery or brand name. These items include shot glasses, beer bottles and cans, glasses, coasters, advertising materials. Labiophilist, this is a collector of beer bottles. Labologist, someone who collects beer bottle labels. Cagophily, someone who specializes in the collection of keys. Cardophilist, a collector of cigarette cards and trading cards. The most popular trading cards are baseball cards. Cigarette cards came inside the packs of cigarettes between 1875 to the 1940s. They were fun for the customers, but for the manufacturers, they were used to stiffen the package to protect the cigarettes from being damaged. Conchologist, someone who collects seashells. Capophilist, a collector of key rings, keychains. Deltiologist, a person who concentrates on collecting postcards. Digitabalist, a person who collects thimbles. Discophile, a person who collects both phonographs and CDs. Ephemera, a collection of items made from paper, such as paper dolls, paper dresses, food labels, magazines, newspapers, and envelopes. These items were not meant to last. Phallerist, someone who collects medals, badges, pins, and other military and civilian awards and decorations. Fuselatalist, someone who collects phone cards. Grabatologist, a person who collects ties. Hexiophile, a person who collects corkscrews. Juvenilia, a collector who looks for toys, dolls, dollhouses, toy soldiers, trains, teddy bears, and games. Lepidoporist, a person who studies or collects butterflies and moths. Lincolnonia, a collection of Abraham Lincoln memorabilia. Lotologist, a person who collects lottery tickets and lottery memorabilia. Memomagnetist, a person who collects kitchen magnets. Militaria, a collection of military-related artifacts and memorabilia. Notophilist, this is a person who solely collects paper money. Numismatist, a person who collects coins, tokens, paper money, and metals. Panopictographist, someone who collects comic books. Ferologist, a person who collects lighthouse memorabilia. Philatelist, a person who collects stamps and postal items. Voluminist, a collector of matchbooks, matchboxes, matchbox labels, and match items. Philographist, someone who specializes in collecting autographs. Plangonologist, someone who specializes in collecting autographs. Phonophily, this is the collection of phonographs. Plangonologist, a person who collects dolls. Bacillivist, a collector of egg cups. Scrofophilist, a collector of old bonds and certificates. Scatolophily, a hobby of collecting all types of patches. They sometimes refer to the patches as badges. Sucrology is the hobby of collecting sugar packets, including wrappers, sachets, tubes, sticks, packs, bags, and squares. Tadstologist, this is someone who collects coasters, also called beer mats. Tobacciana, collectibles of tobacco products, including ashtrays, lighters, matchbooks, cigars, cigarettes, pipes, tobacco tins, and items related to smoking. Toxophilist, a collector of bows and arrows. Tyrosemiophile, this is someone who specializes in the collection of cheese labels. Veterist, a collection of automobile tokens. Vexillophile, a person who studies and collects flags.